This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on government's decision on resumption of film and TV shootings amid corona pandemic. The participants are Arnab Banerjee, film critique, and Murtaza Ali Khan, journalist.
As we are aware that ever since the coronavirus outbreak that happened several months ago and the lockdown that followed, the shooting in television and films has been put on a hold. But say about a month back, some parts of it were started, but we didn't have the guidelines in place. But all that has now been sorted with Minister of Information Broadcasting, Prakash Javadekar. He has come out with SOP, which is the standard operating procedure. This basically focuses on the social distancing guidelines as well as puts emphasis on wearing masks for everybody except the people who are being filmed on the camera. How do you see this guidelines and how do you see this going to have an impact in the longer run on how the entertainment business is run in the country?
I think it's a very welcome move. The past 5 months or so, we've seen all productions coming to complete standstill. And we are aware that every workplace is unique, which makes it so important that every workplace assesses functions carried out by their workforce to ensure they take action to protect against the hazards, exposure to COVID-19. So we all know that certain things are a must. For instance, physical distancing, which is staying 2 meters away from others, minimizing contact with people as far as possible. People on the set, whether it's a crew, the assistant, camera person, anybody. I think first thing that they have clearly mentioned is that there is going to be a very limited number of people present on the set of any film production or television show.
No outsiders are allowed?
No outsiders will be allowed. And it's important that people keep their hands and surfaces and objects clean to prevent contact with potentially infected people, if any. Because the worst thing about this disease is, this problem is that there are people who are asymptomatic. They themselves don't know whether they're infected or not. So these are all very critically important measures. And I think the INB Ministry has done a great job by introducing certain measures which everybody must follow. It is not just for their own safety, it is for the safety of everybody present on the set. People wanted to resume work in July, but without the guidelines. Now that they have a guideline, I think people will have to follow these. And it's a very strange kind of a problem because COVID-19 has presented all of us with challenges we have never seen before. It's important to consider that any of the adjustments we make today may also need some more adjustments in the days to come. It's important that we see how the situation is right now while actors and crew members are present on the set of any film or any television show. But this should also be kept in mind that in the months to come, in the weeks to come, there will be a whole lot of adjustments also that need to be made because this is a new disease which the world over has no solution. I mean, people don't know how it is going to mutate, whether it's going to mutate at all. People say there are different strains. So medically, one has to keep in mind that a lot of these changes that are mandatory now will also undergo some more changes in the days to come as they start shooting. So there's nothing strictly a do and don't rule that has been given to the actors. It's all very general. If you look at the guidelines, it says very clearly that whether it's makeup artists or hairstylists or everybody, they'll have to face their covers with masks. It's mandatory for cast and crew, except for actors, like you said. And
who are using the camera.
Also sharing of costumes, wigs or makeup items, etc. They have to be kept at minimum. And then lapel mics may be avoided and never shared because anything that touches you, any infected person, like I said, a lot of people may be asymptomatic. They themselves may not know that they're infected. So a lot of things people have to very consciously do it. And direct contact with anybody with diaphragm of mics is to be avoided. And obviously minimize use of props and sanitization of props before use is a must. I think it's going to be a big challenge for a lot of crew members to begin shooting because in the creative field, it's not possible to always stay 2 meters away. I mean, you're doing a scene where there is physical contact. But I think technology has also improved to such a great extent that maybe this is something that,
maybe through innovative use of lenses or maybe through an innovative mise-en-scène or how they want to maneuver around with the props on the set, they can get a lot of interesting permutation and combinations, keeping the social distance norms in place.
So contact minimization is at the core of the SOP that you just mentioned.
And the good thing about this, Mr. Banerjee, is that these guidelines have come out after proper consultation with Ministry of Home Affairs as well as Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So this is not just Ministry of Information and Broadcasting coming out with guidelines. These guidelines have been well thought out and they have been properly studied before they have been put into place.
Absolutely. I've also heard that these guidelines guidelines have been decided after consulting a lot of film people also, because there are people who make rules, but they themselves may not be actors. They may not have seen how a shooting takes place. I mean, you can just tell people that 6 feet physical distancing at shoot locations is important, or recording studios or editing rooms. But then there are scenes and sequences where crew positioning or seating, which is actually very, very important on the set. You can't be just 20 feet away if the camera is required for a closer, for instance. So a lot of directors and I think film people have been associated indirectly also, because a lot of information has also come from them. And also this is something that the entire world is facing, be it Hollywood or Europe or any other country. And everywhere it's very important for work to restart. Because whatever industry you may belong to, you have to get back to work. So action was pending and action was important. And as I said, this is a welcome move by the government.
In fact, you have touched upon a very important point, because Minister Prakash Javadekar also emphasized and hoped that this will actually help up even the economic situation right now. The revenues have been dried up because of the ongoing situation, and the lockdown ensured that a lot of people stayed away from work. How do you look at this? Do you think that these norms now they'll give more confidence to people to come out and shoot? And probably they'll also open up.
We all know how much people, not just Maharashtra, but wherever there is an industry, television industry or film industry within India, is dependent on films or filmmaking. A lot of people have their bread and butter thanks to the film industry. So I think a lot of them will be very happy to know that finally they will get back to work. 5 months sitting idle at home is not a very happy situation for anybody. So I think a lot of people will now get the confidence, because in Bombay there has been a scare. We all know how bad the situation in Bombay has been. I'm referring to Bombay particularly because Bombay is biggest industry. I mean, so is Chennai, so is Bangalore, so is Kolkata. But Bombay, probably because of its various units, lots of other things which probably don't happen in other parts of the country or the film centers, Bombay remains the place for everybody. So people were actually waiting for this to happen.
Another emphasis is on crowd management, as we are aware that sometimes the number of people on a set at a given point in time can be very high. So in order to keep that in mind, what they have tried to do is that they have said that why not have shifts in place? Instead of calling everybody at a given point in time, circulate it in different shifts so that smaller batch of people can work at a given point in time, and you can accommodate them across different time slots so that at a given point in time there is not very crowded.
Yes, I think it is mentioned. It says staggered call and pack-up timings for different production units at studios with multiple sets. Also, like you said, designated entry and exit points for shoot locations. Not everybody can crowd around, and generally people who are not part of any crew, any unit, generally hang around doing nothing probably. But this time they're going to be very, very particular of not allowing any outsider to be part of any such shoot. And I think even when people are shooting, regular sanitization, it says, of sets or makeup rooms or vanity vans or even washrooms. So people come at a designated time. People have a shoot. We've heard all kinds of stories about the film industry. A shoot which is expected to start at 9 o'clock actually starts at 12 or even at 3. Gradually, we've seen the entire industry becoming more and more organized, with actors also becoming very disciplined. But this is a call that everybody has taken now to not just follow all kinds of rules, but to be disciplined as well. So I think it's very important for everybody to follow and make sure that all others present on the set also follow the same guidelines. I mean, you can do it yourself, or you can make another co-actor follow certain things, but some of the rules have to be followed by everyone present on the set.
Another good part about these guidelines is that there is a provision for states to add certain conditions if required. I think this is a very good move because it allows greater flexibility depending on, you mentioned about Mumbai, probably a state which is in a difficult situation right now, they can come up with probably more stringent guidelines as compared to a state which is not as critical as far as the number of cases are concerned.
Yes. I think if there are states which are not so badly affected as of now, this virus is here to stay. Maybe in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, or a year from now, it starts spreading in other parts of the country also. So face masks, of course, are mandatory. Apart from that, frequent hand washing. We are not used to doing it at home as well. While you're at any workplace, this is something that you easily forget because you are involved in your work so much. These are things considered not that important, but this is something that is very, very essential. I think it should be kind of made compulsory for everyone. I mean, people do follow physical distancing and thermal screening at entry points. There are respiratory etiquette which we forget while talking. I mean, you're cracking a joke, you're sitting with a friend, or you're discussing a scene with the director or co-actor, and sometimes you forget that there are some physical distancing norms which are a must. So there are certain respiratory etiquette. It clearly says this word is used, respiratory etiquette, which has to be strictly followed. So there is actually a lot that has to change as part of any film set. Initially, I think people will have some issues with that because people are not aware of them. Nobody's aware of them. This has happened for the first time in the world. So gradually, they will all understand, of course, this is for their own safety and for everybody else's safety as well. So gradually, I think people will come around and people will understand that without this, they cannot get back to shoots.
Even though the guidelines are in place, there is such stuff as voluntary guidelines also, because the onus would be on people. Like there's a mention of people who are at greater risk. I'm talking about the elderly employee or certain people who are at greater risk. So it's going to be voluntary. If you can avoid it, it's best to avoid it instead of putting yourself at greater risk. At the end of the day, ultimately, it has to be the individual reckoning also. An individual must take a call that this is something that needs to be done for his or her safety, also the safety of the greater group concerned. But gradually, as this guideline becomes a part of the day-to-day life, they'll probably be more at home while following these norms. And I also feel that going forth, as and when the situation keeps changing, as you also touched upon, probably these guidelines can be further tightened or they can be relaxed as per the needs of the time, the changing needs, because this is an ongoing thing.
They can't be completely done away with, but they can be improved upon. And monitoring is very important. I mean, one can only suggest that frequent sanitization of places or things are must. You can disinfect the premises, but end of the day, it is self-monitoring of health by everyone reporting on the set, which has to be the norm.
But Mr. Banerjee, what do you think is going to be the long-term impact of this? And more than the long-term impact, do you also feel that this will also affect the aesthetics of the entire filmmaking process?
I hope it doesn't come in the way of any aesthetics. I haven't been to any Hollywood film set, but I've heard that there is chaos, of course, everywhere, like everyone says. I've spoken to a lot of actors who have confirmed this, that there is chaos in every film set, but people are still far more disciplined than they are in our country, in our part of the world. So a lot of things I think are here to stay. I mean, when I say here to stay, I mean a lot of distancing can be maintained otherwise also. I mean, we don't realize that we're crowding an area where it's absolutely unnecessary. Also, it's not just COVID-19, it could be any infection.
Lastly, I would like to touch upon any technical aspects of these guidelines. Do you feel that these guidelines will also affect the technical aspects of filmmaking? Because in the beginning, you told about innovative ways that can be used to probably overcome the deficits that we'll have going forth.
We are seeing that a lot of films which were almost complete, they are now releasing them on OTT platforms. So post-production, for instance, I mean, it's all technical. I mean, actors, once they've done their job, it's a post-production people who handle it. So they are managing it on their own, and it's usually lesser number of people when they work in their studios, whether it's graphics or any kind of production values that they're adding to the film.
Like with regards to Hollywood, what I would like to touch upon here is that stuff. So instead of going for the actual live action photography, they were actually working on the post work prior. So probably these are the habitual changes with regards to how you want to shoot your films. But now people are becoming more proactive, and now they are focusing more on the post work because that allows them greater luxury even in a situation like a coronavirus pandemic.
The use of the Arogya Setu app, I think it has been advised because it works if everybody has Arogya Setu app on their phones as well. You get to know about the state of coronavirus in your vicinity. For instance, there are 50 people as part of a unit. So each actor or each member can actually look at his app and find out the state of infection within their vicinity. Whatever measures are taken by the government are welcome, but end of the day, it is the individual himself who has to follow them. He has to come up with his own set of rules.
Self-learning, and with all these guidelines in place, we can work towards a safer environment, and we can together fight this corona pandemic.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Banerjee, for this fruitful conversation.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on government's decision on resumption of film and TV shootings amid corona pandemic. The participants were Arnab Banerjee, film critic, and Murtaza Ali Khan, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our website newsonair.com. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.